So I saw an article come up where Paul Gilbert, I think the headline was maybe a little bit misleading, but was talking about imitation of guitar players to some extent, and talking about, well, even if you do get it exactly, it can maybe be a bit creepy. And I feel like actually imitation of your favourite guitar players is one of the most important and really the engine of guitar players getting better in the first place, I think. So I just wanted to do a little bit of video on that. A very sad day yesterday for the family, but I'll try and do some videos and keep things trucking on. But important to remember that I'm just a guy in a bedroom. This isn't that serious, right? There's serious stuff happening in real life. Me playing guitar in my bedroom is not one of them, so let's keep it light and playful.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
What's important about it to me is that I get to play guitar each day. YouTube is a way for that to be a thing. I do the talky bit because apparently that's what people want a bit of sometimes, but you know, if you don't like it, I'm sorry, honestly. Right, anyway, so Paul Gilbert is saying that, well, in the context of the thing, he was basically, I think we should also bear in mind that Paul Gilbert is, I think, a bit of an innovator. So one of the things that I noticed as a parent now is that one of the most natural things for children to do in particular is to imitate and to copy what you're doing. So they copy like the way you laugh. If you smile at them, they copy you. Things like that happen. They copy the way you try to say things, or they try to copy them. And it's kind of one of the really cool things about kids growing up. You know, she's what, 19 months now, Elodie is, and that's one of the things that we kind of just laugh about. And when she like says something, it's kind of just really fun. I think that's true of so many things in life. And you think about something like a river, right? Like a river follows the water that came before, right? You know, you did the water system in school, but right, like the water behind the water in front is not creepy necessarily, right? We're copying the way that the water's going. You think about all of this stuff, but in particular with guitar playing, I think mostly, if we're honest, have some kind of favourite players that we've spent probably hours and hours listening to, hours and hours trying to figure out what they were doing. For me, I guess my top one might be Eric Johnson, in particular the album Venus Isle. My other top stuff would be Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous. And I guess as well, Gary Moore, I had like the greatest hits disc of that when CDs were still a thing. Dream Theater, I guess actually probably in terms of real time and tab books, I spent a lot of time kind of looking at John Petrucci's playing and went and saw them twice. But I think it's totally natural to have kind of your heroes, influences that you like to emulate, and I don't think there's really anything too creepy about it. I will give you, I guess, two creepy stories. So one is I was recording with Mark Kelly from Marillion. There is a story about that, but basically during lockdown I got a Facebook message and he said, I'm the keyboard player from Marillion, do you want to play on a side project? And I was like, how do you know who I am? Apparently Steve from Marillion watches some of my videos, or used to, or maybe still does. If you want to comment, Steve, you could. And yeah, he said that this guy seems like he might be up for the job. So did that, and in the back and forth when you're recording solos, particularly for like prog stuff, and recording solos in general, it's a bit of a blank slate. And people will sometimes like say, well, why don't you play something Brian May-ish? And what I kind of like to do in this case is actually just do the thing. So there was this ballad, it was in F, and I was like, well, I can just play the solo for Don't Stop Me Now, but kind of it'll be slower and maybe you'll notice. And I got a text back and the guy says, that sounds so familiar, that's perfect. I was like, it's Brian May. And we chuckled. I'd done that one other time. There's a bass player who plays for Rag and Bone Man, and we were doing some like recording stuff just based on an idea, and he said do something like Wes Houch's Mile Zero solo, and I was like, yeah, I'll just. So what I did for that was basically took the timing and phrasing essentially of Mile Zero and kind of put my own notes to it, so it wasn't following the solo in terms of notes exactly at all, and the progression was different. But I did get a comment from people saying like, that's obviously Wes Houch, and Wes himself did comment on it. So sorry for that, I was younger and foolish. So you don't want to do that sort of thing, but I think it is a language that we use to communicate with one another what we might want something to sound like. And important to remember that even in the attempt, probably you won't necessarily succeed. But I think about some of this stuff quite a lot. So one of the things that Matteo Mancuso has kind of taught me, because he does a load of transcription. I guess transcription, if you get into the jazzy stuff, is what you might call this sort of thing. Without the jazz, you might just call it learning people's solos, or playing in the style of, or playing the songs of, right? But Matteo does loads of this work. I think Pat Martino is one of the ones that he's done a lot of transcription of, Alan Holdsworth, Frank Gambale, as well as like Charlie Parker, sax player, and probably a bunch of others. But in particular, I've heard him talk about those things. The thing is that Matteo has his own technique. So what he uses is the licks as like a vehicle for learning, I guess, and then he's trying to get them to work under his own fingers. And I think that might be the thing to try and aim for, is where you're incorporating what you like about someone's style but applying your own thing to it. So for me personally, I spent a lot of time alternate picking as a kid. So some of the economy stuff, as Eric Johnson does it in particular, like the cascading lines and stuff, don't fall under my fingers so naturally. So I kind of try to incorporate something a bit like it, but in a way that suits my hands better. which probably ends up being a little bit less unique and a bit more even in terms of like it'll be 6 notes groupings rather than 5 notes. But that's kind of just one of the ways that you could take a thing. I think where, yeah, there's a little bit of somewhat creepiness to some of this is that sometimes you can go down this rabbit hole of trying to copy an artist's gear and rig all together. But again, is it creepy, or are you just following someone who's made choices that you already know work? I think that's kind of what's going on to me. It's like the river has flown through the I don't know, river metaphor, but you get what I mean. You're following choices that you've heard the end result, so it kind of makes sense if you like that end result to go, right, well, we could try these bits and pieces. So even with like rig and copying gear and buying signature guitars, to me, I don't think there's really anything too creepy about it. It's just, you know, you're treading in the steps of someone who came before, and not all of us are innovators, I don't think. I think there are definitely innovators out there in music and all that sort of stuff, but it's okay just to enjoy, you know, some element of imitation, and hopefully in that you get a bit of fun out of it, a bit of joy out of it. It is really fun, I think, playing guitar and playing through gear. That's why I do it every single day. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but to me, I don't think it's that creepy. When I see people copying bits of what I've done, learning my licks and playing versions of solos, I've never felt more flattered than that. That is, to me, yeah, just really flattering. You've heard Joe Bonamassa apologise to Eric Johnson for kind of copying bits and pieces of what he's done. Wholesale, he kind of calls it. Andy Timmons, I think, has been very thankful for Eric Johnson for kind of tonal influence and bits and pieces like that. I think our heroes are imitators in some ways too. It's okay to be wowed by a player, I think. And, you know, not everyone's going to be Eddie Van Halen and total innovator, but just have a bit of fun with it, innit? Cheers for stopping by. If you like the sound of what I was playing in this video, I was using a Helix preset, which you can imitate if you want. It would be the Eric Combined 2024, which is basically like the Eric Lead preset, or the Eric Clean. Cheers.